Testing, 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 testing. Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. About 5 minutes. Hello, testing, testing. Good evening, everyone. My name is Willie Horton. I'm the Executive Director of the Utility Special District, and I'm honored and thankful that you all were able to make it this evening in all the rain. It looks like things worked out for us. The clouds are beginning to break up, so we probably will get more to show up for this meeting. But thank you very much for coming out to our presentation this evening. This is the first of many series that we hope to put on throughout the year to talk about water. And just so you know, the utility district services not only the corporate limits of the city of Riviera Beach, but we also provide services to the town of Palm Beach Shores and Gramercy Park. There are a couple of other small areas on the peripheral that we also serve. So we're larger than just the city of Riviera Beach. As we get started, what I'd like to do is first introduce some of my staff members who are here. First, let me introduce the main boss. That is Miss Lucinda Monroe Johnson Monroe. She is the office manager for the utility district. And then boss number 2 is Latasha Haywood. Wave your hand, Latasha. Latasha takes care of all of our accounting for receipts, payable receipts. And then next to her is Lynette Dent. If you call the utility district, usually that's the first voice you'll hear. Lynette, wave your hand so everybody. And then as we come down the aisle, you'll be hearing a little bit more from Miss Leanne Cobb. Miss Leanne Cobb is our Safety and Compliance Officer for the Utility District. Then we have Mr. Landis Wright. Mr. Landis Wright is an electrician. He's the first electrician we've had in the Utility District, and he has been a lifesaver since he's been with us to help put back online lift stations and wellheads and things of that nature. And we really appreciate the efforts that he's put forth in the last few months that he's been with us. Next to him is Mr. Larry Brown. He is our Superintendent of Collections and Distribution. Then next to him is Mr. Joseph Jackson. He is the Chief Mechanic on the wastewater side. And then next to him is Mr. Sylvester Johnson. He's the Chief Mechanic on the water side. I also have in attendance tonight Mr. Arky Caballo. He is the Superintendent of the water plant. He's been with us for about a month now. Month and a half, and we were fortunate to steal him from Coral Springs, so we're thankful for that. We also have Mr. David Danford. Now, David has been with us. David, stand up so everybody can see who you are. David has been with us for 30 years. David had been serving as the superintendent of the water plant. He's now not the interim. He is now the assistant superintendent. David is in drop, and we're going to be losing David in about another little less than 2 years now. So we're really thankful to have him for the time that we have him. We're really thankful that he's with us. And then finally, looking around the room, finally I'd like to introduce the assistant director of the utility district, Mr. What's your name? His name is Leighton. Okay, Mr. Leighton Walker. There's a story behind him as well. When I got here, he was just a staff engineer, and we had a lot of vacancies in the utility district. And he's just been a rising star since before I got here. I also want to acknowledge one of our board members who's here for the district, Dr. Julia Botel. Dr. Botel? She's been a staunch supporter of the district, and I thank her for all the support that she's given since she's been on the board. This evening, what I want to do, I've got 3 presentations that will be given by Arky and by Leanne and by, where's John? John Armstrong. John is so new, I forgot he was in the back of the room. John Armstrong has been with us for about 2-3 weeks now? About a month. And we stole him from DEP. He's our senior engineer, one that we have had vacant forever and a day, and we're just really happy that he's on board with us. John will be giving a presentation on water conservation at the end. Leanne will be giving a presentation on compliance and things that we have to do in order to ensure that the water that we produce is safe. And Arky is going to walk us through in just a moment on the process that we follow to draw the water out of the ground, treat it, and put it into the distribution system. Then after that, with those 3 presentations, that should take somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes. Then I want to open it up for question and answer. The thing that I would ask you to do, if there's something in particular that I think we need to do a one-on-one with, Lynette and Latasha has forms that I would ask you to fill out. On there, you'll put your name, your phone number, your address, and what the concern is so that we can look at your particular issue personally, and we will follow up with a phone contact, and we may have to come to your location to visit your location if that's okay with you. Okay? So with that, I would like to again present Mr. Arky Caballo, and I'm going to assist him in his presentation, but he will direct it.
Good
Okay.
afternoon, good evening, sorry. As I said, I'm the new superintendent here. Sorry about that. I'm going to go through a little bit of what we have going on at the water plant. We start our process drawing our water from the superficial aquifer. You have a couple aquifers here. The lower one is a fluorinated aquifer, which is more of a brackish water. The superficial aquifer that we pull from, you get a very good quality of water. It doesn't require as much treatment. Move on to all right. One of the first processes is that our raw water goes to the stripping towers, where all the water is distributed over the media. From there, the water travels down the media via gravity, and simultaneously there's air that is introduced through the bottom of the tower, at which point all the volatile organic compounds are removed. So in other words, the stinky water is removed from the raw water source. From the strippers, we'll send the water over to our they call them softeners or clarifiers. From there, we add our coagulant, which will form a particle, flock. The flock turns into larger flock, which settles down to the bottom of the tank. And from there, as you see the troughs on the side, the clear water goes over the troughs into our filters. From the filters, this is where the process passes through a fine filter and removes small particles. And at that point, after the filter process, we will introduce a type of disinfection which is used to kill bacteria and other microorganisms that are in the water. And then from there, it heads into our distribution system, which is we service over 14,000 service connections.
Now, what I would like to do, I would like one or two volunteers to come up. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do yet, but I need one or two. If I can get one, that would be great. Just one volunteer. I'm not going to ask you to drink anything. Come on, please, come on. Come on. Madam Board Member, I'd like for you to come up as well. I love to expose Dr. Botel. When she became a council member and my board member, I had an opportunity to take her on a field exposition, and she got her taste.
Ladies, want to step up?
Okay.
Hopefully your nose does work, because that's
Yeah.
what you need before.
Yeah. What now? This water is the water that comes out of the ground, and for years, of course, people were using wells, and this is the water that you were getting. Ms. Botel, before I let you, I want to let you smell.
I'm sharing upstairs. It doesn't smell like it.
Okay.
It should. It normally has some type of hydrogen sulfide. This is the water that gets introduced into the strippers.
Can you smell it now?
before.
That smells.
Yeah. One was gotten yesterday, and the one that's probably fresh is the one that was gotten today. The important thing that I wanted to do with this is, number one, get you to understand the process. Not only are we removing the odor from the water, but there are other things in this water that we have to disinfect for, and that's why it goes through the treatment process.
This is where it enters the clarifier or softener into the center zone. Once it's mixed up and it slowly filters and coagulates in the center zone of the clarifier, and all the solids will settle down to the bottom. From that point, we get the clear water here. I'm going to let the lady smell. This is coming out of the clarifier right before it goes into the final filter. And if we add a chemical to this, this would be potable water. But at this point, it's not, because we don't have any disinfectant in this. Okay. So once it goes through the filters, this is our finished product right here. This is coming right out of our tap from our faucet in our lab that we do our hourly sampling from. And there's. Yeah. And we're going to have people at some point today. We have several different types of water up here. I ran analysis on all types of water. They all fare within each other's limits. So
Now, Ms. Botel is a witness. You notice at the city council meeting, they have all kinds of bottled waters sitting up on the dais. But if you watch the Riviera Beach Special Utility District's meetings, we have water pitchers full of Riviera Beach water. And I will tell you right now, Ms. Botel drinks Riviera Beach water. Is that correct? And she said she's alive to tell about it. So I just want to acknowledge that. Now, again, the purpose of this process is just to show you, or this demonstration is just to show you what we go through. We know that there are issues within our distribution system. I mentioned to you that we service not only the corporate limits of the city, we also serve Palm Beach Shores, Gramercy Park, and some other peripheral areas around the corporate limits of the city. One of our worst areas, and I hate that they're not here tonight, but our absolute worst area in our service area is the Gramercy Park area. Gramercy Park is an area that was originally served by a private utility. Back in the 80s, the city, I want to acknowledge our mayor. Our mayor has just walked in the room. The city acquired this private utility back in the 80s. When it was acquired, little to nothing was done to upgrade that system. That has been true for a long period of time up until I arrived. We have existed under 2 consent orders in recent years. Both of them were issued in 2016. One was issued by the health department for the water, and it was primarily for issues out in the Gramercy Park area. And then one was issued by the Department of Environmental Protection for discharges on the wastewater side. I'm proud to announce that the latter part of last year, the Department of Environmental Protection signed off on and lifted us from the consent order that we were under from them. We are about to move in the same direction with our water from the health department. So we are doing things that is making a difference. Things don't occur overnight. There has been a lot of things that should have been done for a long period of time that was not done. And to correct many of those things, it's just going to take some time. But I will tell you that the water, the finished water coming out of the plant is good water. It is good water. There are other issues that we're going to talk about as we go through this presentation. Tonight you received several documents. We just published our annual water quality report. We're required to do that on an annual basis. We're a month early. I felt it was important to get it out for this meeting. And this year, what we're doing, we're actually mailing this out to every account holder. Now, for those of you who live in condos, it will go to the account holder that's on that master meter. So everyone in the condo may not receive a copy. However, this same report is on our webpage. If you go to the city's website, then go to the utilities webpage, you'll find this report. Okay? In addition to that, we have provided a question and answer sheet of about 8 questions, and some of these things we will go over tonight to talk about color, taste, and odor. So you should have gotten that. If you didn't, just raise your hands, and the ladies in the back will make sure that you get a copy. Our safety and compliance officer has also prepared a sheet of what do your water results mean. If when you call and you tell us that you've got an issue on your side of the meter, we will come out and we will perform a test on your water. We will check the water on the outside faucet. We will ask you to give us a sample from inside your home, and then we will go to the nearest fire hydrant to compare the water quality coming out of the fire hydrant to the water in your home. A lot of people don't understand, particularly those who don't use their water a lot for a lot of different reasons. Either they're traveling, there may be some snowbirds here in the room, and you're here only 3 to 6 months out of the year, and you don't know that when you return, it is important that you flush your water system, because the water that's in the pipe has aged. And when it aged, a lot of things happen in the pipe. So we'll talk about some of those things. And I just did a fun thing. I think it's important for people to understand that even your bottled water, a lot of them say it's spring water. Okay, I don't need to say any more. Who knows about the water that's produced, the bottled water that's produced here in Riviera Beach and sold here? Anybody? Wait a minute, let me see. I see a hand way back here. Do you know who it is? Wait. Who is it?
Aquafina.
Okay, she says it's Aquafina. Did you all know that? Is that a Pepsi product? That's a Pepsi product. Huh? A Pepsi product. Right up on Garden Road. That's Riviera Beach water. Just so you know. Okay, now to be fair, they go through additional filtering process. They remove the disinfectant that we have in the water that we are required to put in the water to maintain the safety of the water to the end user. Okay? So I just wanted you to know that. We also, I mentioned that we test a lot of the bottled waters against our water. We did one back in 2018. We looked pretty darn good against some of this bottled water. Some of the water that we tested is Aquafina, Pure Life, Zephyr Hill, Dasani, Fuji, Evian, Voss. We did all of that, and we've got the results for you. We did one recently. This one was done from April 17th through today. We did 4 tests, just so you know what our water looks like against bottled water. So we've got those for you. So what I want to do now is bring Miss Leanne Cobb up, and she's going to talk about some of the regulatory processes that we have to comply with. Ms. Leanne Cobb.
I don't know if I need it.
Oh, well,
I'm pretty
because it's on
loud.
TV.
Oh, okay. Let me. Get this. All righty. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. And so nice to see so many faces. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do to make sure that the water is safe for you to drink. That's my job. Okay, make sure all the regulations are followed and that we're doing everything that we have to do. And I'm going to show you all the different regulations that we have to follow. And it's been a chore. I've been here just about a year now, and it was something new to me as far as the water field goes. I've been doing compliance and safety for way too many years. But I can't believe how many regulations there are in order to make that water for you, okay? An amazing thing. So we're going to talk about how do we ensure that your water is the best and is it safe? The testing requirements and schedules of testing, the roles and responsibilities of the people in the water treatment plant, and who to call if you have any problems or questions. And again, like Mr. Horton mentioned, we have some forms here that you can fill out if you do have any questions or concerns, and we will be getting in touch with you to solve those problems. So we're required by federal, state, and local regulations, okay, to test our water. We report the results to the Department of Health, the Department of Environmental Protection, South Florida Water Management District, Environmental Resource Management, a number of different agencies. We could not exceed federal, state, and local drinking water limits without putting it in that report. And if you look at the table in the back of the report, it lists the times that we were out of compliance and what we did to fix it, okay? We test for over 100 chemical compounds. So there's a lot of testing involved, and some of it we do on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual, and so forth. And I've actually got some table to show you, and I've got some handouts if you're interested in having them that show exactly the testing we do. We do pesticides and herbicides, so things you've probably heard of like DDT. Dalapon is that's an herbicide. Alachlor, that was a chemical you may have heard of a few years back that they put on apple crops. Okay, that's another pesticide. We do things like volatile organics, which are things that you might find in gasoline, like benzene and toluene, ethylbenzene or xylene. Also chloroform, perchloroethylene, which is something you find in dry cleaning, okay? And things like naphthalene. Anybody know where naphthalene comes from? I don't know if anybody uses them anymore. Mothballs. So things like that we're required to test the water for, to make sure nothing has gotten in from, say, industries in the area, nothing has gotten into the groundwater and is getting into your drinking water. We test for bacteria monthly. Okay, and again, we did have some instances where we had a positive result, but it was for total coliform, not for fecal coliform, not for E. coli, nothing that has to do with anything to do with fecal matter. Total coliform can be found in soil, on leaves, so if you bend down and pick up a leaf off the ground and then touch your water, it's a good chance you've just put total coliform into your water. All right, so we have to follow very strict protocols when we collect samples so that we're not touching things when we collect those samples, or we could be contaminating our own samples. We also have laboratories collect samples for us. We don't collect all of our own samples. We also let laboratories do it. We test for metals like lead and arsenic and mercury. That get tested for in all of your water. We do radiological compounds every 3 years. We didn't find any last time we analyzed, and actually in 2020 we'll be doing a lot of these tests. It's our triennial testing cycle is in 2020. We'll be doing asbestos testing, and then we do the routine tests that we run when we do your drinking water analyses, things like color and hardness and alkalinity and pH, all those things that can affect the quality of your water, the taste of your water. Okay. Any questions?
How often do you do those tests?
Pardon?
How often do you do those tests?
It depends on the test, and I'm going to show you in just a minute.
Looks like the scoring on color and hardness are not as good as before. No problem. I'm going to say again that the color and the hardness of the water do not compare to water bottled.
That is correct. In some instances, if you look at, you're looking at the most current one. If you look at our hardness, here's some bottled water that has gotten up there. In hardness and in color, the color it's actually very good. As long as we're below 14, we're good. Well, let me, we're going to address, I know where you're going with that, and we're going to address that in a moment. I'll tell you what, let me do this. If you will continue with your presentation, and at the end of your at the end of John's presentation, I'm going to open it up for questions, and we're going to talk specifically about things that can impact the color of the water in your home. Okay?
One of the first things that she said was she was very surprised when she first came up on the stage was how many things that she had to test. What's your background that you didn't know there was that many tests that went on? Me as a layperson.
No.
That's what you said.
Yeah, sir, I'm sorry, just a minute. I'm going to let her finish her presentation, and then we're going to go to John for his presentation. Then I'll open it up for questions, okay? So finish your presentation, okay?
Not tests, but regulations. Because these are the regulations that we're required to follow. There are numerous regulations, different regulations.
I'm sorry, we're going to take questions at the end. So, okay, address the audience and speak into the mic because we're on TV as well.
Okay. So there are federal regulations. The federal EPA has a number of different regulations that we're required to follow, including the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Lead and Copper rules, and it goes on and on and on. There are state regulations. There's a regulation that is for drinking water standards for monitoring and testing, how frequently and what you have to test. There is permitting and construction and operations and maintenance regulations, telling you how you have to run the plant and how you have to maintain the plant and how you have to operate the plant. There are public notification and consumer confidence report regulations. Lots and lots of information. This is how you have to fill out this report. This is how you have to notify people. This is how often you have to notify them. And it goes on and on. Water well permits, so the wells that we're taking the water from, there were regulations on how you can drill those wells, how much water you can take from those wells. And again, it's a large regulation. There's another regulation on operator licensing, what they have to go through, what training they need, and what testing they have to do in order to become a licensed operator, in order to run the treatment plant. And then we have the South Florida Water Management District that oversees how much water we can pull out of the ground so that we're not affecting that aquifer and taking too much water. And then we have local regulations. Palm Beach County, Article 15, has additional testing that we're required to do on a quarterly basis. And then Article 14 is another, it's a Wellfield Protection Act to make sure that we're protecting the well fields. So there are a number of different regulations that we're required to follow, covering every little piece of the operation. This is our testing schedule, and I do have a few handouts here. I know it's hard to see up there, but I will leave some of these out. Sorry, I can't move. I don't like standing still. We have monthly requirements. We do the bacterias monthly from 42 different locations. Okay, and then we do, yeah, I can see it better here. We have a report, a monthly operating report that we have to submit. We have the bacteriological results for the wells and the distribution samples that we need to submit. Quarterly, we do the chloroform and the disinfectant byproducts, which is the chlorine and the chloramines that we put in to keep the bacteria out of your water. We do another bacteriological test called a plate count quarterly. We do those volatile organic compounds quarterly that I talked about, the benzene and the chloroform and so forth. We do our monitoring wells for the South Florida Water Management District on a quarterly basis, and we test that for volatile organics and gasoline compounds. Semi-annually, we do a chlorine burn. We send you out a notice and tell you that we're going to do a higher level chlorine through the system to make sure that we kill anything that may be in the system and kill that bacteria. Okay, again, we're required by law to do these things. We do this ECR testing, which is chlorine and hardness and pH and conductivity and nitrates. And that's something that isn't on that form. Your bottled waters are usually extremely high in nitrates and nitrites. Our water it's barely detectable. Nitrates and nitrites are critical for babies, okay, and young children. Nitrates can affect their brains. And bottled water is not a great thing to be giving babies, okay? You're better off with the city water, which has 0 to very little nitrate and nitrite. Annually, we do nitrates and nitrites throughout the distribution system, and that's how I know how low they are. We do lead and copper triannually, and our lead and copper levels are extremely low. We have to do flow meter calibrations and water loss reports on an annual basis. We have to do asbestos, copper and lead, volatile organics, inorganics, radiologicals, secondary contaminants, as they call them, which is a whole nother list of compounds. And again, we have to do that all triennially. It goes on and on, okay? And I'm not going to bore you with this list, but I do have these if you want to see what our testing requirements are. There's a lot of testing that we do. And again, if we have a problem, it has to be in that report that we give you annually. Okay, and if you have any questions on any of it, feel free to call us and I can answer your questions about any of it. Roles and responsibilities. Our water treatment plant staff. They're all tested and certified. They're licensed water treatment plant operators. We actually do have a couple of trainees now working with our licensed operators to learn how to be operators themselves. They ensure the plant is run according to all those regulations I showed you. They collect the samples from the plant and customer locations to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements and regulations. They collect, we also have samples collected by certified laboratories who will come out and collect some of our samples, and they take them back to the laboratory and do the analyses that we can't do. Myself, as compliance and safety, I ensure that all the appropriate samples are collected, that the appropriate tests are run on those samples, that they're done monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever that schedule may be. I ensure that the proper reports and notices are sent out and that things are done when they're supposed to be done. And then our management. Our management ensures that we have the equipment, the chemicals, the training, the licenses, the knowledge that we need in order to operate that plant safely. If you have any questions or concerns, please make sure you call us.
And just for those who don't know the number is area code 561-845-4185. Lynette's back there holding her fingers up to make sure I get the right numbers. Again, the number is 561-845-4185. One of the things that Ms. Cobb didn't talk about are the multiple tests that are taken multiple times a day by staff. Now, these are not tests that are necessarily required by our regulators, but we perform tests to ensure that continuously we are producing a high-quality water. So there, in addition to all the tests that she's talked about, there are additional tests that we do in-house. Some of them are on an hourly basis to make sure that we're meeting certain criteria. So with that, I want to bring forth Mr. John Armstrong. He's our new senior engineer, and he's going to talk about water conservation, which is close and dear to Madam Patel. If we ran out, we'll make some more. If you will, just fill out a form and give us your address. We may not be able to get it tonight, so if you've got some form. Okay, I have my hand up. We'll apologize. Just fill out the form and we'll do it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Armstrong, and I'm going to briefly be talking about water conservation. Yes, ma'am. I work with the City of River Beach Utility District. Engineer. About a month. I've been an engineer longer than a month, since 1985. So I've been with the city for a year. I'm a month, excuse me, and I've been practicing engineering since 1985.
Well, if we can hold the questions until after, please.
Okay, our drinking water supply comes from the groundwater, specifically the superficial aquifer, and the wells are roughly a little over 100 feet deep to a little less than 250 feet deep. And if you're interested in where the superficial aquifer is, on that map of Florida, the light green area is the superficial aquifer. Now, before the water comes from the aquifer, it gets recharged from the rainwater. So that's a water cycle on the screen there. And we get about 52 inches of rainfall here in southeast Florida each year, and a majority of that, roughly 90% of it, is lost to evaporation and transpiration. And then there's also some additional losses to runoff. Now, there are 5 water management districts in Florida, and we're located in the South Florida Water Management District, which is shown in blue in that map. And that map shows water resource caution areas that's required for them established by Florida Statutes 373, Chapter 373 of Florida Statutes. And the entire South Florida Water Management District is located in a water resource caution area. The only places in Florida that it's not in a water resource caution area is in the light gray color there. Now, basically, as you know, we have, with respect to rainfall, there's 2 seasons. There's the wet and the dry season. In the wet season, we get a majority of the rainfall. And unfortunately, in the dry season, that's when the highest demand is, which stresses the system. Now, the South Florida Water Management District has restricted our use on obtaining water from the aquifer, and so it's cheaper to, and less expensive to conserve the water rather than find a new source for the water. Now, this figure here it shows, it's a little cumbersome, but it shows each month, and in green is the plant or the vegetation needs on rainfall. Light blue is the rainfall that we get each month, and the difference in the dark blue is how much water you need to irrigate with. And basically, in the summer, you don't need to irrigate, typically. I mean, this time here is a little bit drier, and so we got a lot of rain now. And basically, if you irrigate, on average, 30 minutes each day, the excess rainfall that you're wasting is about 7 feet high over a year period. Now this little pie chart here shows typical water usage in the home. And one thing I like to point out maybe is the purple area. About 13 to 14% of the water that's used in a typical home is leaks. And so you can save money and conserve water if you just turn off all your water and read your water meter. And if it's recording water, maybe you can try an hour or 2 hours. If it's recording water, then you're leaking water. You may want to try to find a source where it's leaking from. Now, the South Florida Water Management District requires under Chapter 373, the Florida statutes, for us to develop a water conservation plan, which the city has done. And there's basically 4 elements on the screen there in green. And all those requirements have been codified in the City River Beach Code of Ordinances with a specific location on the screen in blue. The first there on the screen is installation of ultra-low volume plumbing fixtures, and so the city is required for new development to include those type of fixtures. And then there's also a requirement to establish Florida-friendly landscaping regulations, and which has been codified. And another one is for new automatic sprinkler systems to have a rain sensor or an automatic shutoff valve. And the last on there is requiring day and time restrictions when you can irrigate. Now in South Florida, under Chapter 40E24 of the Florida Administrative Code, a state requirement limits irrigation to either 2 days a week or 3 days a week. And in Palm Beach County, in that statute, Florida Administrative Code, it requires a maximum of 3 days a week. And that's been also codified in the City River Beach Code of Ordinance, so it's the same as the state requirement. And it's based on your home address. So if you have a home address that's an odd number, ends with a 1, 3, 5, you can irrigate on Monday, Wednesday, or Saturday. And if your home address ends on an even number, like 0, 2, 4, 6, then you can irrigate on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And there's some exceptions to this, but that's basically it. Like if you're planting some new vegetation, you can irrigate that day, any day of the week. If you plant on Friday or Monday, you can irrigate that day. Or if you have someone that comes out and is going to test your irrigation system, then they can test it deviate from this. But there's some other deviations. Thank you for listening. I know you want to get back to the good stuff about the water quality and all.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, now to the tough part. All right, let me get out here in the middle. All right, now, the way we're going to play this game, I'm going to ask for Lynette and Latasha. Where did they disappear to? They disappeared on me. They're making copies. Okay. All right. Well, Leighton, you and Archie can help. I want you all to get the big mics, and I'll use the little one. What we want to do, I'm going to take this gentleman first. Sir, if you will ask your question, and then we will attempt to answer it. If it's something specific to your home, we may ask your permission to come to your home so that we can check your water. So we'll take you first.
I've only lived here for 3 years now, and I live in a small condominium complex out on Singer Island. And my water, ever since I moved in, the water has a greenish, yellowish tinge to it. I filter all my water. I drink Riviera Beach water. I really haven't found anything that doesn't taste right, but it's always looked terrible.
Thank you. For me, the answer to your question is kind of simple because you do live in a condo, and on the island, you have seasonal residents. And the system is big, and so what I suspect is happening is that the water coming into the main line, once it passes the meter, becomes aged. Those who are there are using it, but it may not be enough flow to keep the water as fresh as it needs to be. One of the messages I need to get out to my entire customer base is when you don't use your water on a regular basis, it's imperative that you flush your system. Guess what? We have to do that on the city side as well. You see oftentimes where water, particularly out in the Gramercy Park, we flush out there every day. And we do that to try to keep the water fresh. In the condo, if you're living in a condo, it's going to be a little tough to check your particular water because you're connected with everyone in that condo, and there's a master meter, I'm sure, that's servicing the condo. But we will attempt to try and compare your water with the water that's in the main, and we can easily do that. And if the water quality is different, then it suggests very strongly that there's a problem internal to that condo complex, not getting enough flow in that complex. Okay? I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do you all remember your numbers? I don't remember them. Who was number 1? Okay, I'm gonna come. Okay, let me do this side, and I'm gonna come back to you. I got 8 on this side. 1. Who was 1? Who was 2? Who was 3? Who was 4? Who was 5? Who was 5? If y'all don't answer, I'm gonna give 5 to her. Okay, I'm gonna give 5 to her because there was somebody in here. Who was 6? Okay, who was 7? Who was 7? 7. And who was 8? 8. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're what? 5. Okay, so number 1.
Okay, my question is, you're saying to flush. I'm on Singer Island. I'm at the Water Glades. Certain people have problems with the water there. I don't seem to have it in my unit. But how would we flush it if there is a problem with it? How would we go about it individually?
Very good question. In condo complexes, it's difficult to flush. So my advice to you, because you have a system that's serving multiple units, and if you have a concern with the aesthetics of your water, it may be just a good investment to go ahead and invest in a separate filter system for your event, because you don't know how many of your neighbors are seasonal. And if they're seasonal, that's going to create for more stagnant water to occur in the system. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. But my question, I think part of my question is, if we come back, after being absent for a while, is it beneficiary to turn everything on and
Most
let
definitely.
it run?
Most definitely, because in your unit, the water has been setting for a while.
Right.
So when you return, you definitely should cut every faucet you have in your condo complex on for about 10 or 15 minutes and
Okay.
just let it flush itself. Yes, very good question. You can be away for a week, honestly. I'm just being very honest. You can be away for a week, and depending on it, because you're in a condo complex, if the water is already not moving well, and you get that same water into your portion of the system, it could impact your water at that point. Staff wants to answer. I'm gonna these are my chiefs. Hold on.
Well, when you all have a problem, you call. Yes, when you all have a problem and you call the city, we actually come out, and if there's a problem, we flush that hydrant that is close to your property, and then, if they're in the condo, we can still flush on the outside, but then there are personal hydrants on the inside of the condo that actually can be flushed by your maintenance people.
Okay. Next question.
Good evening, sir. My question is, what is the significance we pay the highest water bill compared to the
I am
West
so
Palm
happy
Beach,
you asked that question.
compared to the Palm Beach Garden, Wellington? Our bill is the
Well,
highest.
actually,
What is the significance? Every year you have to raise the price from
you know,
last 8 or 9 years.
let me just say, first of all, the rates have been increased for the last 9 years to accommodate the bond issues. There have been, when the district was created in 2004, there was a bond issue that was issued. Then in 2014, there was a second bond issue to pay off the previous debt. Then in 2016, there was a third bond issue that had rates associated to it. Now, that particular bond issue was for capital improvement projects. The first two bond issues, the utility district couldn't use it for any improvements in the system. It wasn't until 2016 that we had monies to use for capital improvement projects. So you're absolutely correct. There has been over the course, the last rate increase went into effect this fiscal year. There are no new rate increases in effect at the present time. We do have a rate consultant working on our rates right now. I had presented it to the board a couple of times since I've been here. We've had to put it off because of concerns by the board. We being the utility district's finance director, myself, along with the rate consultant, met last week, in fact. We will be updating that particular plan in hopes of presenting it to the board in the June, July timeframe.
So do we expect this October the rate won't go up?
The rate won't go up this coming October. But there's something I do want to do, and I will try to triple task here, because I think it's important. Hold on for a moment. Let me see if I can pull it out. Yeah. Do you have it? She's going to look to see if we have the rate study. It is not true that we are the highest utility in the Tri-County area. The chart that I'm looking for will demonstrate that we are the fifth lowest utility in the Tri-County area. Out of it, I think it was 22 or 23 major utilities, to include Palm Beach County, West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach's rate is $7.20 per 1,000 gallons. Our rate is $2.94 per 1,000. Seacoast is $4 and some change. So it's a misnomer that we are the highest rates. And since we're talking about rates, I may as well talk about this. Before I came on board, there was a contract that was bid to replace all the meters in the service area. After I got here, the selection had already been made, and so it was my job to make that contract work for us to move forward to replace the meters. As I got involved in that, I got here in October of 2017. It was given to me about January of 2018. When I got involved, I discovered that a tremendous number of our existing meters were not functioning properly. Some of them weren't functioning at all. So for many of those customers, they were only paying the availability charge. For some, it was reading erroneous numbers. All right? And we have approximately 13,000 meters in our service area. Out of 13,000, it was well over 2,000 meters not working or functioning properly. All right, so what that means is we have now embarked upon, and we started on the 5th of February of this year, replacing meters, and we're replacing them in cycles. To date, we've replaced approximately 3,800 meters. This contract has to be completed by mid-November, where we'll have all the meters in place. I'm telling you this because if you are among those whose meters have not been reading accurate or reading at all, you will see an increase in your bill because it's going to start reading correctly. And I want to be honest and upfront with you about that. So just know that. And what we're doing, we are holding on to the old registries from the meters that are being removed. And we will hold on to them for a period of 30 to 45 days. And if there are some discrepancies in the readings, we can actually pull the old register and compare it to the new. Now, one other thing I need to say to you, the beauty of the new meters that we are installing, we get real-time reading on it downstairs in the finance department. The finance department is starting to call customers when they see an abnormality. If they suspect that there is a water leak, customer service is now starting to call customers and say, are you using your water? Because we see that your water is running continuously. And that's a sign for you to go out and check to see if you have a leak somewhere, okay? The easiest way to determine whether or not you have a leak is to cut off every faucet in your home. Then go to the meter, and if the meter is still moving, you have a leak somewhere, okay? So that I just needed to tell you that. Now, we were on number 2. Now we're number 3. Who's number 3? Here's number 3, right? Oh, did you? Well, actually, I know he was number 3, but I tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and let you talk, and then I'm going to come to real number 3, since you got the mic in your hand. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Angus. I live in a gated community called Woodbine off Military Trail. About 3 or 4 months ago, we got a letter, all the residents got a letter in the mail about some type of bacteria in the water. What was that, and how can you prevent it happening again?
Yes. Among many of the tests that we do, it has a requirement of a certain percentage. If we exceed a certain percent, and I don't know if it was a tier 1 or a tier 2 letter that went out, it was one or the other. And there's several notices. Let me, if you allow me, let me just back up for a moment. A lot of customers of the utility district are not accustomed to receiving some of the notices that you've gotten from me since I've been here. But it is a requirement by our regulators to keep you informed on what's happening, what's going on with your system. The first notice that we would send out is if we are going to disrupt your water and bring the water pressure below 20 pounds per square inch. When we do that and there's a break, I'm required to send out a boil water notice. That's the first notice. Those notices we actually deliver to you personally. Those guys sitting along the wall there, they and their teams will go out and deliver that notice to you. If you're not home, they'll put a door hanger on your door, and I'll talk about door hangers in a moment because I've had a couple of calls about door hangers. But we do that so that you will be aware. If I declare a boil water notice, it is for your safety. It doesn't mean that there is a problem with your water, but because we dropped below 20 psi and there was a break in the line, I would rather be safe than sorry. And so we do that, and we require you to boil your water for 72 hours. Now, at the end of that 72 hours, don't automatically assume that it's safe to drink your water. Unless you receive a release of the boil water notice from me, you continue to boil your water, okay? There are tests that we have to perform during that 3-day period to make sure that we've met all of the criteria that is set forth for us to meet. If we meet those criteria, then I will turn around and send a release of the boil water notice so that you will know that. Okay, that's the first notice that we send out. Then we have Tier 1 and Tier 2 notices. Those notices are a result of the monthly tests that we do, and if for whatever reason we exceed 5%, Leanne? If we exceed 5% failure on those tests, the federal government requires that I notify either a segment of my service area or my entire service area, okay? And those notices, they're not saying that there's a problem with your water, but it's letting you know that we found an issue in an area that needs to be addressed. And we have, by regulation, we have 30 days to send that notice out. The boil water notice, we send those out immediately. The Tier 1 and Tier 2, we send those out. We try to get them out within the first 10 to 15 days. But the regulation gives us up to 30 days to send those notices out. And it's only, the purpose of that is if you or someone in your home has a immune system that they would be sensitive to changes in the water quality. We're not doctors. We can't say whether it will or will not affect individuals like that. And we don't know who's in your home. So we think it would be better, and because it is a requirement by the federal government, we are trying to make sure that we meet all requirements of the government. Then we have our burn, free chlorine burn that we do twice a year. That burn is to make sure that our distribution system maintains a good, safe condition, free of bacteria that can build up in lines, particularly lines that don't get moved frequently. And so we do that twice a year. When we do that, I send the notices out. I put it on Channel 18. We'll put it out on the radio. We post it and whatnot. This is just to let you know that we're doing it. It doesn't say that there's a health issue or anything. We're just letting you know what we do. So those are generally the notices that we put out. And then, of course, we are now moving forward to put out, I don't think you all have ever received the annual water report via mail, but I think it's a good investment so that I could make sure that all customers of the district gets it. And if you have a question, just call us.
The total coliform letter.
The total call, Leanne? Yeah, that was a Tier 2. Yeah, that was a Tier 2 letter that I was talking about, and it's a requirement that when we exceed the 5% on total coliform, it's just a sign that we need to be cautious, and we make people aware. It's not to say that there is in fact an issue. I give you an example. The last one that we sent out to the entire customer base, we had hits in 2 or 3 areas of our service area. One on Singer Island, one in Gramercy Park, and where was the third one?
I believe it was just west of here.
Just west of here.
Yeah,
so Gramercy Park here in Central City and on Singer Island. Because of that, we consulted with the Florida Health Department, and they advised us it would be best to just send it out to the entire customer base. And I know it's confusing, but you know we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to be informative. We're trying to keep you, our customers, informed on what's going on with your system. Now, if it was something that was a health issue, we would have notified you immediately. We would have put it on the television. We would have done a whole lot of things beyond just sending out that letter that we have 30 days in which to send it out. It was just an informational issue. But when in doubt, please call us. I would rather send those letters out and you give us a call than not send the letters out and then something happens. Okay? Now, the real number 3 is right here.
This was 2A.
That was 2A. I'm sorry. That was 2A. Okay. Remember, this
this
is 5 over here. Okay.
This is along the same line, Mr. Horton, on the contaminants and the sampling in, looks like Q3 2018 with respect to E. coli and total coliform bacteria, where we had violations. Looks like it hit 3 wells, and with respect to coliform bacteria, 17 positive samples. So I don't know who should answer this question, perhaps Leanne. It looks like one was a collection issue, and we got a violation, but I'm not sure which of the two was an actual violation.
Let me first talk about the wellheads. This was an interesting abnormity that occurred. It happened at 3 wells simultaneously, which suggested to me, because I was so concerned with that. But beyond that, there are things that do happen occasionally that gets us out of compliance. Now, let me say this. I've been here 19 months. In 19 months, we've not received one fine yet. And the reason for that, I believe, is because I get proactive basis. The last meeting that we had, I was not able to attend because I had another meeting going on at the district, and so I sent staff out. But based upon the feedback that they gave me, the meeting went very, very well, and they're very pleased that of the progress that we're making, progress that said they have not seen, omit, or overlook. And by being upfront and honest with the regulators, they tell us that. And they give us suggestions of things that we should try, as opposed to them coming, finding us, or issuing a consent order and trying to force us through the court system. We have a dialogue about it, and we talk about ways we can accomplish that. And that's what's happening. That's the thing that's happening today that may, so I just say that, okay?
Were these failures in testing or actual failures in conformance to, the metrics?
For the E. coli positive samples, coming from a laboratory background, I actually felt that it was the laboratory that made an error in the collection process, that something leaked in the cooler when they took the bottles and put them in the cooler, just because we never have E. coli in our well samples. And all of a sudden to have 3 samples seemed very suspicious. We actually stopped using that laboratory immediately after that and switched laboratories because we didn't trust the quality of their service. On the total coliform, again, what we were talking about, the 5%, that 17 samples is in all of these months, these 4 different months. We had a certain number of samples in each month that exceeded 5% of the total 42 samples that we take every month, that had just that total coliform that I described before, which is, something that you're going to find in dirt and grass and so forth around your house. It's not a fecal matter of any sort. It's an indicator. They use it as an indicator so that if you see total coliform, there may be fecal matter there, but it doesn't mean there is.
Okay, who was number 4? Okay, number 4.
There you go.
Hi, my name's Cindy.
Well, use the mic because you're on TV.
This is my mic. Okay, hi. Hi, I'm Cindy. I have a couple of questions. The first one's real simple. What labs are you using currently to test your system?
We changed so much. We've got 3 labs that we're using now. Latasha, do you know the names of the 3 labs that we're using? We've changed labs because of performance issues.
Correct.
And the board has just approved the 3 labs. Somebody throw out some names of the Pace Analytical, Capsule Pharmaceutical,
Florida Spectrum.
Florida Spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a specific reason for asking that question. First of all, we have one of the local ice vending machines.
Mm-hmm.
So I service a lot of the customers that may be using our ice vendor in the area. And my first and main question is, since we've had the business about 6 or 7 years now, and I should have approached this sooner and have not, but our water is yellow that comes out to our consumer, to our customer. I also have another location that I do not have yellow water. That being said, I don't heat the water. I don't have a hot water heater. It's not sitting there. But I also sell a lot of water and a lot of ice on a daily basis, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. So I have moving water all the time. Okay. And that makes me think perhaps it's the pipes outside coming in to my system, and maybe that's something I should have the city to come take a look at for me.
If you would fill out that form and
Definitely will.
so that we can get your address and go out. Do you have a filter on your ice maker?
We do have, we've changed that a little bit over the years. We have a sediment filter. Okay. We did have a carbon filter that I have since removed because that removes the chlorine. Mm-hmm. And the one time I had it in there, I did have an issue. Right. And all that being said, I just want to say to the consumers as well in our locations, as a provider of ice and water, we do have to have our water and ice sampled every 3 months by the Department of Agriculture. All right. And I do get good results. So even though it's yellow water, it's
the quality is good.
The quality of the water is good. However,
but it's the aesthetics, and I understand. Let's give us your information.
I certainly will. Okay. And aside from that, I just want to say, too, with the sediments in the water, you put, and I actually brought samples to show if anybody cares to see, but when we put ice in our coolers and that ice melts and the ice gets drained, you can see the sediment that is left on.
And it sounds like there's a piping issue. That's what it sounds like.
It's just, for a consumer standpoint, it's not good. I test it every 3 months. It's fine. But I will certainly leave you because I'm thinking.
Let us come out to your location. Okay.
Definitely.
Number 5 is right here. I know who number 5 is.
Thank you. You mentioned Gramercy Park.
Yes, ma'am.
There was also an issue with Solartron. What is happening with Solartron and the water near there? Also, the second part, do we use recycled water any place in the city?
We do not use any recycled water in the city. Well, I'm sorry. Let me restate that. The city does not provide recycled water. Now, the reason I wanted to restate it is because, the Rapids is open. That water is recycled constantly, and then they refill it with our water. So from that standpoint, it's being recycled. But the city of River Beach because we don't have a wastewater treatment plant, there is we would have to purchase from the county who has reclaimed water use or something like that. We do not do it here in the city of River Beach. To address your first question, I'm going to ask Leighton, who was involved with that, to address that.
Well, regarding Solartron, as you know, it was a Superfund site, and I think it's now in the stage of natural attenuation. They have what is called a pump and treat system where they're just running pumps to pump that groundwater and run it through an air stripper rather, to remove low levels of volatile organic compounds. We do have a well that we've been monitoring downstream of that site for VOCs, volatile organics. Exactly, and they're really minute concentrations that we detect every now and then in our samples. Is that correct, Leanne? Very minute. But, however, when that water comes in, if any of that water is taken up into our groundwater wells, when it comes to the wellhead, you recall Archie showed you those giant strippers, those air strippers. It really amounts to nothing. Our finished water or water entering our system,
by the way,
has no VOCs. When it all gets in and it's diluted and everything and runs through the strippers, there's nothing there. I'm not sure what the issue was in Gramercy, but I know Solartron is right here. That was a Superfund site back in the day, and VOCs was the issue. With Gramercy, I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms. Is it the?
We actually, with the issue that you asked about, we actually lost a well. That well is no longer in operation. We created a new well further west, 2004.
Yes, 2000.
The new well that replaces that well that was right along the railroad tracks that was contaminated, was in that contamination zone. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Before I move on to number 6, what I'd like to do, I'm going to try not to get my big head in the way here, but this is the comparison of the combined water and sewer bills at a 6,000 gallon average usage. On this chart, we have the utility of Boca. Believe it or not, Boca is the lowest cost utility in the Tri-County area. The next lowest is, I have to get my head in the way, is the town of Jupiter, then Boca, Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, Palm Beach County, the village of, no, that's not Western. Sequester, okay. Seacoast, the village of Wellington, the utility district. On this one we show right here. There's another one that shows us to be where Palm Beach County is, and Palm Beach County now is over here. But this one shows us to be right here, and we're still below the average. Then we have the city of Coral Springs, the town of Lawrence, Lantana. Is that oh, that's a T in there. Tamarack, Broward County, Cooper City, Martin County. So we go beyond Palm Beach County. The city of Fort Lauderdale is right here. The city of Lake Worth, the city of West Palm Beach, the city of Hollywood, and this is Dania Beach. So I wanted to show you all that because that question continues to come up. And in the last revision of that, we're down lower. This is an older chart. Let me see. This one, does it have a date on it? No, it doesn't. This is an older chart. We've got a newer chart that shows us to be the 5th lowest. I just wanted to show that. Now, who is number 6? Number 6.
Couple questions. When you were talking about sending out the notices to boil water for 72 hours, wouldn't it be better, and you said probably should do it longer until you get a notice of release, wouldn't it be better if those notices said boil your water for a minimum of 72 hours and we will let you know when it's okay to do it? Because people might just say 3 days, that's it. What would the problem be if we're boiling the water? That's number 1. And for Tier 1 and Tier 2, you have 30 days to notify people of that. What would that be? Because I wrote down here that that's if people have an immune system deficiency, they might be affected by a Tier 1 or Tier 2 problem. And, ooh, if I had an immune deficiency, I'd want to know that day. I wouldn't want to wait 30 days. So why is it 30 days? I know there's a regulation, but just why? And what are the situations with the boil water, Tier 1 and Tier 2? Those are what is the reason for those? We would be getting those. My second question, I have more, but I'll just limit it to 2 right now. All the pipes in Riviera Beach are old, and I know you've been going in there with cameras, checking to see what condition those pipes are in, and a lot of them have had to been replaced. My question is, all the city is probably about the same age. So how many roads have been redone, and when will the other roads, where are we on that system of replacing those pipes? How many more have been tested? How many more have to be done, and when can we expect that to happen?
Okay. I'm going to address the latter first. Before I got here, the practice had been if we're not going for road work, if you're not going to disturb the line, then just leave the line in place. And I said no to that. If we know that we have, as an example, we know that we have asbestos pipe in the ground. So if we've got a road project that's going to come about, I want to invest and replace that asbestos pipe. And the primary reason is, although you may not touch it during the construction, asbestos pipe is very sensitive, just like clay pipe. And you don't address it then. As soon as you put that new road down, it's going to break. And so the approach that I've taken since I've been here is to replace every asbestos pipe that we have. So we have been replacing pipe like crazy since I've been here, water pipes. You addressed the issue about televising the water lines. We have not gone into that technology yet. That was a new technology that was presented to me. We do televise the wastewater lines, but we have not, we tried to put out a bid to do some televising of the water lines, and no one responded. And it is an expensive process. So I'm trying to find other communities who have actually used that, because I don't want them to disrupt or make things worse than they are. But we do know, like in Gramercy Park, we have that system, we have portions of that system that's a 16-inch line that's only serving maybe a block and a half. And with a system like that, a 4-inch would probably do just fine, or a 6-inch would probably do just fine. So what we're going to do as we move forward is those areas we're going to focus on, those areas that we know are a problem, we're going to focus on. Then to get to your question, her question was, how do I know that there's not a problem there? I don't know, and I'm assuming that there is because of the age of the system. So I'm taking the approach to be safe than sorry. No, ma'am. For Gramercy Park, I'm going to initiate the project. So that means that the road is going to be disturbed. If we disturb the road, we have to replace the road. So in Gramercy Park, because it is so critical, and there's so many things wrong in Gramercy Park, I have to invest in Gramercy Park. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It has to be done. In other areas, we try to work it with the Public Works Department, or with the county when they're doing work, or with the state when they're doing work. If there's an area that we know has had repeated issues, I'll give you an example. 2 months after I got here, if you recall, Avenue E between 15th and 16th had a pinhole failure on the roadway. Public Works wanted to cover that hole up. When they told me about it, I said, wait a minute, there's a problem there. When we went in, I had my staff to televise it. There was a 30-inch sanitary sewer line that was about 12 to 15 feet below ground. And it had already failed, and the earth was falling into the pipe, and it was washing down. So we replaced that whole block, but we also replaced the water line in that block. So we killed two birds with both stones, and the city got a brand new street out of it on the back of the utility district. So, well, we don't know that. I mean, and it's systematic. There is no set rule for determining when. I'll be very honest with you. We may not know exactly what type of material exists. I'll give you another example. I have been on the job here 2 days. Right out front here in City Hall was a break. Our GIS showed it as asbestos pipe. So I said, replace it. When we began to open it up, we couldn't find the valves. Our GIS didn't have all the valves. It took us 3 days to find the valves so we could isolate it. It was a 16-inch ductile. It wasn't asbestos. It was a 16-inch ductile pipe that was easily repaired. Someone had hit it and didn't report it. And we thought initially that it was the sprinkler system. But they had hit our main line coming out of the water plant, right out here in front of City Hall, 2 days after I got on the job. So it's little things like that, and there's certain judgment calls from a professional standpoint that I've got to make, and I make those calls based upon my experience. I'm telling you, our worst area right now is the Gramercy Park area, and it needs our attention. There are other areas in our service area that also need to be addressed, which we are addressing, and we try to do those as part of roadway improvements if we can, because we'll save money that way. But if we find an area like I mentioned on E Avenue, we had a situation out here on Garden Road. We've addressed that, and that was, the failure was around the manhole. When we began to explore to see what was there, we found that there was an 8-inch asbestos force main. I'd never heard of asbestos being used on a force main. It was a asbestos force main. We had, what size was that water main, a 6-inch? 10-inch? We had a 10-inch water main that was running perpendicular. And so I had to address all of that. And ironically, 6 months later, we found that same asbestos pipe was leaking maybe 200 to 400 feet west of there. So then I made the decision to replace that whole thing. So that's the way we approach this. We don't always know. Our records are not the best, but what we're doing now, we're using technology. As we go in and we find things, I'm requiring staff to report that immediately and get it into the GIS system so that we will know what is being done. We put the date that we identified it. If we replaced it, we identify what we've replaced it with, so that information, that historical information, we can begin to build that. So that's where we are.
There was nothing before with the GIS system. It just didn't list
The
things.
GIS system was lacking. That's the best I can say to you. Okay, now, who is number 7? Number 7. Yes, ma'am, I did earlier, but I'll go through it again. The boil water notice is when. Yeah, let me get through some of the other questions. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Larry Kaiser. I live on Singer Island. I am a resident, and I'm also owned investment properties there. I want to applaud you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well
Thank
done.
you.
The proactive approach, fantastic. Fantastic.
My staff they're doing it.
Amen. I mean, the progress of Riviera Beach is fantastic.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring a couple items. Your feedback, I appreciate this forum. I am a resident in Waterglade, like this woman here. So I have 3 questions. I want to start with the entity that I am involved with, it more as an investment entity, but I also am here on behalf of being a committee person for our board of directors for our Palm Beach Marriott Singer Island Resort and Spa condos. Mm-hmm. Contrary to common belief, perhaps, Marriott does not own the building.
Oh, really?
Each of us owners of 330-some condos are the individual owners. Marriott is simply the management entity on our behalf. I've already expressed some of this information in terms of that data point with Julie. Mm-hmm. I want to specifically ask your help, perhaps, with your department, with your team, if you could show him this. Specifically, we seem to have a recurring issue in a building that's not even 11 years old. Yellow water in a bathtub like this. With an April 3rd review on Hotels.com, the water was yellow. We called down to the front desk. They told us it was purified but yellow.
It was purified but yellow?
Purified but yellow. That sounds fantastic, but in the meantime, this is a public relations and multi-million-dollar nightmare for us and the rest of the Marriott properties on Singer and our tourism. This becomes pervasive. This becomes like Flint, Michigan. A mother who's coming to stay and bathe their 3-year-olds in this, they don't care what the statement is. All they see is yellow. And they immediately, you know that woman's not coming back to our building. You know that, right? That's not going to happen. So based on those set of facts, based on the idea that it's yellow-green, and we have a building that does not sit stagnant, the only month that it does sit stagnant is September, more than others. Otherwise, we're going full tilt. This was in April. That wasn't even Easter Passover window of time, and certainly part of our peak season. We have a fantastic maintenance department. They're on top of it. They're delivering us the hot water from, water riser, on the roof.
Right.
How is it that it becomes yellow in a new building against that kind of a photo? I showed you one, my first part of my question. In this case, 2, I understand the whole process of the single-family housing mix that we have here. Singer Island, we have a higher concentration of multifamily housing vertical. Mm-hmm. To your inspection point, in a real-time case I'm living with about a proactive measure, staying with the proactive theme. for our multifamily high-rise projects on Singer, the implications of that. And then my third question is going to be the progress of where we're going with some of the capital improvements. This specific question, then, can your guys come over and have a consultation with our maintenance department?
We will go ahead and set that up. If you will provide us your information, and I'm going to ask either John or Leighton to take a lead on this. So if you would make sure and give your contact information to the ladies, we'll follow up on it.
Fantastic. The second step, I'm going through a process right now with regard to your proactive idea. Mm-hmm. I mean, amen, right? We have aged buildings on Singer Island. I live in one of them that was built in 1977. I introduced this to again, I'm on committee to do a number of things. I introduced to them that we need to do an engineering study of our piping system because we do have people who are gone for long periods of time. There's sediment. We know the flushing process and the whole process. But we need to do an engineering study for the health of the pipes. I'm living through a situation in my building in Colorado that's like Tierra on Singer Island, that we're undergoing a $29.5 million water pipe replacement program now. It's going to take 3 years, $55,000 per unit. The disruption and everything that goes with it. Maybe, perhaps, with Julie, us, all of us together, it's kind of like a team effort. Is there an inspection group that we can actually introduce to the board of directors of the buildings along Singer Island to say, consider taking a proactive analysis of your piping system? One, because of the reasons I just stated. Because it's going to trigger, a capital expenditure nightmare. And then you also have people going through various phases of remodeling, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever it is per condo, only to watch it become corrupted in that manner. We've already seen an episode of it in our building in Waterglade. In fact, within the past 60 days. Pinhole leak in a pipe, ignored by a contractor, turned into a holiday season nightmare for somebody. So that's my second point. And then the third one is the capital, sorry, my bad. The progress of capital improvement items that you mentioned with regard to bond issues and so on.
I'm going to take the latter first. In Palm Beach Shores, we actually have a project underway now it's under design right now, and your mayor in Palm Beach Shores has been working with us extremely well. We're at 90% on the design right now.
Yeah.
And we will be replacing segments of the water main in Palm Beach Shores along with the meters. And some fire hydrants that she spoke with me about. So,
I'm on Singer.
Oh, you're on the Singer side.
I'm on the Singer side.
Okay, I'm sorry. When you said Marriott, I was thinking about in Palm Beach Shores. So I apologize.
We're the middle beach.
Right. What I would like to do on the other two, I think it's going to be imperative. Yeah, I think it probably would be imperative for us to sit down with you and whoever your chairman is to talk. We can possibly recommend some firms that you all may consider utilizing, but I think it would probably be best that we sit down and have a detailed conversation, because it's more than what we can address here tonight, if that's acceptable with you.
Yeah, the improvement one, great. The middle project of our Marriott Singer Island Resort and Spa, a little more, I think it's about your guys having some conversation with our maintenance folks. Mm-hmm. Because this problem that I showed, with this yellow water, this didn't happen on April 3rd. This has been occurring since 2012. We cannot afford, none of us, in the hard work that everybody's done to get Riviera Beach to where we are, afford a tourism nightmare over a water problem.
Let's make that meeting happen quickly. Okay?
Tomorrow, if you'd like.
So it doesn't really matter what pipes we change. The color is tied to the treatment, antiquated treatment plant.
But what he showed me.
But we are
right
putting out colored water. I mean, we've talked about allowing the color level of 15, that being good. That's not good. That's acceptable. But the lime softening plant we have will always produce water with color. And
Let-
so we're not going to change the color of the water by changing the pipes. We've got to change the treatment. Is
Let
that
me
correct?
just say you're correct, but what he showed me in the picture is not the colored water that we produce at our plant. So I think it's going to be imperative that we look at what may be going on at that particular property, because that was a dark color that should not exist. That would not be a product that we're producing out of our plant. So that's something that we need to look at. I need to move on because it's already 7:30. I said it was going to go into 7 o'clock, and I believe number 8 was. You were number 8? I believe, listen, you ain't getting me in trouble with Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown going to be number 8, and we'll make you number 9, okay? Ms. Brown.
Hi, good evening. I honestly believe that, Mr. Horton, you are trying. I'm going to say that. I know the work is cut out. I produced to the previous manager the water report from what all had gone on in this city here, and how we have to maintain those aqua filters and where the pockets are within these cities here. I was out west out there with movie star Aaron Brockovich, and the gentleman that did this study for this city here, he shared those elements with me. David Hall, a couple years back, he came out to my home because I saw what was happening. He can attest to that. I got with the manager then. Mr. Arjima was here. He was fired. Mrs. Sierra was here. He was fired. Here we are back to these same moments. I'm not saying that all of this here occurred under your watch, but as I've said in previous meeting, you inherited this. So it is detrimental, your responsibility. Life is water. Brown, yellow, green, it should not be. It just shouldn't be that. I'm going to say that. It is nothing that compared to whether or not our pipes are bad. It is the treatment. That's where our major problems with our water has lied in this city for years after Mr. Brown went and fought for that money. I'm going to say that. And as long as this city exists, we will be faced with problems unless they are not addressed and taken care of the way that they are supposed to take care of. We can no longer put bandages on these problems because it will not work. So I applaud you for what you're doing now, but there is more work to be done. The engineer here, it was just an introduction for you, Mr. Armstrong. I'm going to say that. You're not equipped, not as of yet, to know exactly where you should master in accomplishing here what this city needs. We do not want to be a Flint. We are a city with tourism. We are a city with the port and all of these amenities that makes us the great city. We have to have great water. Within our homes and businesses all over, in our schools, I'm a stickler for the schools. Our children must be protected, as well as all individuals that are within this city. Tourism is another one of our great aspects here. I was listening to number 7 there when he spoke. We cannot continuously to bring revenues in here and expect for our tourism not to come back to visit us or stay, because this is what they see. And we must do these things here. Leanne, I'm disturbed about what she says. I would rather have someone to tell me the truth than to change labs because you did not get the results out of 3 labs. She said it. I noted it in my report. I don't care how many labs that you may change. I would rather know the truth, because in that aspect, it helps us to deal with what we have to deal with at hand and correct those problems. You can try to the end of the earth, and you will still come back with bad results. those bad results must be taken care of, resolved. It is resolutions that should come out of that, not just change it because you did not get the results that you wanted, Leanne. That doesn't work, Leanne. So I said what I said because I do respect you, and I respect your work, and I know that you are trying, and I want the staff to get on board. Gramercy Park, that is one of the elements, the elephants about this whole thing. You residents, that park there serves us as well. We know that that is a great, great problem there. Woodbine, Miss Bram too. Last Friday, you all were supposed to come out there because all of a sudden, my toilet had the brown water. You all did not come. So I'm here tonight. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of that. I forgive you for that too, because we are in the forum and you're allowing us to speak. But these things here, you need to know, and know that the residents are with you too. We want you to succeed. We do not want you to be a failure. But it is detrimental things here that must be addressed. Water is life, and we have to have these things addressed. I have some things here I said about Gramercy Park. I'm glad to hear that that is your elephant there. And I would like for you to do everything that you can to repair it and restore it so that we can be made whole. Because right now, we as residents, we are not whole. We have spills all over this city here. Those spills, they'll notify us within those areas where those spills are. Even if you have to put it on Channel 18 or send out some of the workers, to pass those letters. That's critical. That's critical because we never want to come to this chambers here and just fill it out like that. That is your duty. Whether or not it's a tier 1 or tier 2, if it's a spill over this city here, we expect to know about it. Your annual reports, I totally agree about that. We should be brought up to date with that also. And other things that you are doing also, I said Seacoast Utility. See, we have given Seacoast millions and millions of dollars. I would like to know the status here. Why? It is for the utility district to tell the residents why you use Seacoast Utility. Because we are paying them millions and millions of dollars. Ms. Bram have those reports. I don't speak off the top of my head. But if we are to get it together, we have to be a unit force to work together to make these things happen and not close the door and shed everybody out. It's time for the truth so that you can proceed to do better and accomplish your goals that need to be accomplished in addressing our water situation. So I would like to know about Seacoast. And also, too, I spoke about Gramercy Park. You stated that that's your elephant there. And that is critical there. We want that built up. Also, I know that I spoke with you and your other gentleman there about U Avenue, that new facility that was built there. I'm gonna say it on the record here. We want that dumping site cleaned up. It can be better organized. You built that plant there, and it's just in disarray all back there. It sits on that beautiful MLK corridor there. We have Suncoast on that corridor. I've got concerns, complaints from the parents from Suncoast, Mayor McLeod School, those schools that sit on that corridor. They uses that U Avenue there. And they says, you built that plant, Miss Brown, why have they not cleaned up that place there? David Hall, are you responsible for that? Or whoever responsible for that? Make us whole. Make us unified. Make us beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for the spanking. I appreciate it. Ms. Brown and I have got a relationship. We can talk. And Ms. Brown, I'm sorry. Let me address a couple of things if I can remember them all. Now let me just make it clear. My staff doesn't do anything without my approval. It wasn't 3 labs, it was 1 lab, and the problem was that it became suspicious when it became three sites. Well, I'm telling you now, it was 3 different sites simultaneously, which suggests to me that there was a problem. And when we looked at it, sometimes you can contaminate the sample, and this is not the first time that there had been issues with this one particular lab. And so we changed out that one lab. It wasn't 3 labs, it was 1. And we changed it out at my direction. So that's on me. The other thing with Ms. Brown, you threw a lot at me. We got the recording though, so I can go back and listen to it. Yeah, one of the things I promised Ms. Brown Ms. Mary Brown, was that as we completed Avenue U, I would put up a screen barrier. We're still planning to do that. It's just that we have so many other things that we're trying to address, and also the stockpile of spoil material that's on that same site. I was going to put up that barrier to camouflage that. I can have it hauled, but by spending the money for that, that takes money away from other things I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is maximize the financial resources that I've got to address things that have to be done right now. I promised you that I was going to do something there. I am going to do something there, but I don't want to take away from other things that need to be done. So I haven't forgotten you on that. I'm still going to do it. Originally, I was going to have the contractor to do it, but because of the litigation, we're trying to do most of that in-house. So my in-house labor crew staff have agreed to do that barrier. The first thing we have to do is put up the sprinkler system along U and MLK, and then we'll put up the 10-foot hedges to.
But can you gather some of all of that stuff that's thrown
We will. We.
Even if you do not articulate the fundings there, but the way that it's organized is disorganized.
We'll work on it, Ms. Brown. We'll work on it. I've already addressed that. Yeah, I've already addressed Gramercy. Yes. Now, let me say something about the engineer. What you all need to know is that Mr. Armstrong came to us from DEP. He came to us from the regulatory side of DEP. The regulatory side of DEP. So things that he's seeing in Riviera Beach is not something that is new to him. He has experience, he knows what he's looking at, he knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's doing. So you don't have to be here an extended period of time to gain an appreciation for some of the challenges that we have here in Riviera Beach. So he is a benefit to this utility. There was one more question I'm going to take back here. We're getting late in the hour, so this will be our last question. All others, if there are issues, okay, I'm sorry. I am sorry. Okay, let me address him, and I'm going to come to you. You will be the last one, okay? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My question is, I've heard everything you've said thus far. A lot of it I believe to be true, and a lot of it I believe to be maybe inconsistent. I think that if the city is sufficient enough, has a treatment plant that's sufficient enough to go through the process according to Florida State Administrative Code 550, which deals with the drinking water, and also being in compliance with the Safe Water Drinking Act that was enacted in 1974. I think that if, it seems as though City of Riviera Beach is running through a process of maybe 2 treatments, which deal coagulation, flocculation, and then the disinfection or the filtration, right? I think there's at least a 2.
We only have 1 treatment.
You have 1
Yeah,
treatment.
it's a process
right.
that makes up the treatment.
But hearing about yellow water and green water, I know you don't really have it sounds like iron and manganese may be an issue. But I think when you said about the people that are living in those condominiums and things like that should run their water for a period of 15 to 20 minutes, that's kind of excessive. I think that, like the gentleman said, these places are being used daily. So, even me, I run my water for a couple of seconds, and I do smell an odor in the water, but I don't let it run a couple of seconds every time I use this, fill up ice trays and fill up my water jar. But I think that if we can determine that the treatment plant here is sufficient and is providing potable water, not palatable. Because a lot of people are under assumption that just because it looks good, and like you mentioned, aesthetically pleasing, we assume that the water is fine, when there's a lot of impurities that do get into the water. I think that I haven't heard anyone mention about who runs our plants. Are there A, B, or C plant operators? What's the high level of proficiency that we have that are actually running the plant? I know the engineer, his main function should be able to repair the plant, but not actually do the day-to-day water treatment process. So I want to know what's the highest level of A, B, and C licensed operators that we have, their experience, and if the plant is actually sufficient enough to provide water that's sufficient to drink. And I'll close by saying, I know that there's a process that if a home believes that there's bad water, you can go out and do a drawdown. That first morning draw that you can get that water and you can test it to make sure and see where a problem is. It sounds as though if the water at the plant is being, is coming out distribution-wise sufficient, then the problem is going to probably lie in the people to the point of where they're receiving their water either in their condominiums or their homes, two different monsters. But I think if we can establish that the city is providing sufficient water, and we don't have any other filtration processes. I mean, we don't have any green sand filter processing. We don't have anything else, it sounds like. So maybe the city may be lacking in its ability to provide the water that will prevent some of the problems that they're having in their homes. And if so, water is a very expensive process where you're looking at reverse osmosis, saltwater intrusion, things like that we may be facing. Maybe we may be faced at the fact that we can't provide sufficient water. So what's the alternative? That we're going to, now privatization, even with privatization, you're going to spend money. What can a city do that's going to be cost effective to bring our water to standards?
Okay, thank you for your questions. Let me try to address as many of the things that you brought up as possible. First of all, the utility when I first got here had an authorized strength of about 58 positions. Out of the 58 positions, there were at least 10 vacancies, if not more, when I got here. The board supported me on my request to add 6 additional water plant operators to the water treatment side. On the water treatment side, we have at least a half dozen A-licensed operators in the plant, in addition to Mr. Carbala and Mr. Danford and Mr. Salas. In addition to those 3, there are at least another half a dozen A-licensed operators. We've had some trainees who have now moved up to the C license ability, and they are continuing to take the tests. So I've made available the training for them to continue their advancement and to continue maintaining their competencies for operating the plant, because the plant is the first priority of the utility. Then, as it relates to the quality of water, I assure you that the quality of water coming out of this plant, because of our source water, if our source water wasn't as pristine as it is, although it has issues in it, it's considered to be a pristine water, so it makes it easier to treat and move through the process. At the end of the process, the water that is produced is a very good quality water. Now, you said something that is very key, and I totally agree with you. Some of the problem very well can be on the distribution side of the delivery of water. It can be. That's the reason why we want you to call us, so that we can check by checking what's coming out of your pipe and then checking the closest fire hydrant. Sometimes we find that there is a problem on the distribution side, but many times we see that the water quality is good coming out of the fire hydrant, but there's a problem on the customer side of that meter. So it varies from place to place. And we will come out individually to check that. So when you have those types of problems, I would invite you to just give us a call and let us check it. There was one other thing that Ms. Bram raised a moment ago about Seacoast. We have interlocal agreements with the City of West Palm, the City of Seacoast, and we have an interlocal connection with the town of Mangonia Park. That interconnect with Mangonia Park basically is to provide them water if they have a problem. We would never look to Mangonia to provide water to the city. While we do have an interconnect with the City of West Palm, I choose not to use their water because their water is a blended, primarily surface water, and when you mix the two chemistries of water together, that can create a problem in my distribution line. So I've gone to the utility that is similar in nature to the water we draw from, which is the superficial aquifer. So yes, we do open the interconnect with Seacoast occasionally when we are running low to try to meet demands, or we've had to take additional wells off for maintenance. We don't have the redundancy at the plant right now that we should have. We are moving forward to address those issues, and when we do address those issues, we will have the redundancy to continue that and reduce needing to open the interconnect. But the reason for the interconnect is for us to get service from them and them to get service from us. Now, saying that, Seacoast rates is higher than ours, but West Palm Beach is higher than both of us. So sometimes we just don't have a choice. We don't open the interconnect just to open the interconnects. If we open the interconnects, it's because we have a water capacity issue to meet demand. That's when we open the interconnect. If we can meet demand, there is no need for us to open the interconnect. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go to the last person, and then I'm going to say thank you for giving me 2 hours of your time. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. My name's Russell Barnes. I live over...
He's promoted me, doctor. I like that.
over in 3000 North Ocean. I've got two questions. One's regarding the existing water, and then one regarding something in the future. The reports I've read and the other things say our water is hard. All right, our water is hard. The numbers show that it's hard. We choose to produce hard water. I mean, there are options that we could apply from a city standpoint, adding more lime, which would cause the hardness to go down some. So it's a choice we're making to produce the water at the hardness we are. It's impacting us substantially. I mean, our board is talking about putting in additional softeners within our condo association, which is going to cost me, so I'm going to pay for my water as well as additional softeners. Why won't the city put in additional lime to soften the water further so we don't deal with such hard water across the city?
Wait, come over here, Archie. You got to talk in the mic. Remember, you're on TV tonight.
It's not a matter of putting in extra lime. It's the capacity of what we have currently, that we are treating the water to get the lowest hardness we can at this point. We aren't at full capacity. Shortly here, when we go over some of our projects that we have going on to make the plant produce the water, should we produce it, we will be able to lower the hardness. But until then, we are producing the lowest hardness that we can produce at this point.
So you're saying that there's nothing you can do now, because I mean the reports I've read that are online that were published by other engineering firms who've reviewed the city's system are pretty clear that it's a choice that the city is making to produce the water at the hardness that it currently is, and that other things could be done now, or at least they could have been done 6 years ago when the report was produced, that would allow you to produce water that is not as hard as it is right now.
Yes, you're right. It is a choice. 6 years ago, it might have been a choice. At this point, it's not a choice. It's where we could run at. It's our capacity right now. We're running it at the lowest we can produce right now. In the future, when we do bring up our North Softener, we will have the capacity and the ability to lower the hardness. But until we do that, it's not a choice right now. It's where we're at.
You're telling me tonight that there's absolutely nothing the city can currently do to lower the hardness of the water?
Let me see if I can.
I'm just trying.
I understand.
I
No,
mean,
I hear
because
you.
we're about to invest our own money to do something that I personally believe the city could be doing now to lower the hardness of the water.
Let me see if I can present it to you this way. I've evaluated the entire treatment system.
Yes, sir.
The treatment facility was designed to handle 17.5 million gallons of flow. We can get through our plant on a high peak demand at a max, and this is really pushing it, a 12 MGD of flow through the plant because of systems that need to be addressed. We have 3 softeners. One of the 3 is not operating the way it should, and it's the largest softener. That's the 7.5 MGD softener. That's the farthest northern cone structure that you see at the plant. That one needs major work. Then we have the middle softener that's a 6.5 MGD of flow, and then the southern one that's a 3.5 MGD of flow. I say this, and for some of you this is too technical, but we don't have the redundancy that I spoke of to allow us to do some of the things that we could do to lower the hardness if we had the redundancy in the plant. We do not have it. Then when you look at our filtration system, it is working, but it needs major work. So I'm trying to move forward as fast as I can to address many of these issues. Those are where the bottlenecks exist in the plant that does not allow us the flexibility to do some of the things that you've talked about. So if as we move forward in addressing some of those things, we hope that we will have a greater ability with the additional capacity needed to improve on the water aesthetics that is delivered to the end user. That's where we are.
So then my follow-up question is, because we are budgeting to spend a substantial amount of money to rehab and antiquated technology would be what I would consider lime salt.
Yes.
At what point do we stop putting good money to antiquated technology and invest in the future? And so we bring Riviera Beach water up to the point, so you compare our rates to a Jupiter, the top water quality in the state. I mean, so they've got nanofiltration there. You talk about Teguesta, reverse osmosis treatment. You talk about Wellington and the treatment. They're upgrading their water systems right now with advanced treatment. And here we are pouring millions of dollars into antiquated technology that may allow us to reduce the hardness, but will never allow us to get rid of the yellowness in the water. So at what point do we step back and say, enough of this being second-rate citizens, and let's invest in the city, and let's get some good water quality by investing in technology that is current. And this plant was from
Let me address your question because
1956.
Yes, it was. Let me address your question. We have been in discussions about doing some advanced treatment processes at this location. Now, what I'm trying to do is maximize the resources that we have. If we were to build a brand new 17.5 million gallon facility, the cost for that,
40 million.
No, that's what some of the consultants are telling you, but that's not true. These are people who want to come in and privatize this utility, and that would be the worst thing for this community. Hear me out. That would be the worst thing.
I'm not saying anything about privatizing.
Here-
I never mentioned that.
Here, but I'm telling you, when you said 40 million, I know exactly where that number came from. So let me just answer your question. Let me answer your question. So we have looked at other technologies to see if we could make it fit on this plant. The renovation to this plant, we think we can do it for around 30 to 35 million. If we go out to build a new 17 MGD facility, 17.5 million facility, it's going to cost well over $100 million, not counting the replumbing that would need to be done because you would have to site it in a different location. So there are things to be considered as it relates to the economics and what this community can afford. I submit to you and everyone in this room that we can make it work on the footprint that we have. Now, if my board decides that they want to move forward with a brand new facility, I would love a brand new facility. I'm not opposed to a brand new facility, but it's the cost. I already hear from customers often about the rates that they already pay. Just know, in order to do that, the rates will go up significantly.
Just and with no disrespect, you can look at the bids that just came in at the Village of Wellington, and they were. I mean, you're talking about $5 to $6 1,000 gallons to build to be $100 million. The bids that just came in Wellington 2 weeks ago were a little $2 to $2.50 per 1,000 gallons to build it. Again, so I believe that we deserve better than what we have, and maybe somewhere between what I'm talking about as it relates to a bid number that I saw and what you're talking about is where the real number is. We could look. Yeah, I would. I talked to Shannon LaRock over in Wellington, and
okay. Let me do this because I do want okay. No. He was the last question. He's the last question.
Thank you.
And I do want to respect everyone's time. We are moving forward to do things to make improvements to our plant. You need to know that. And we're trying to do it within reason to make sure that we don't unnecessarily impact the ratepayers. Now, if my board decides that they want to go in a different direction, they will tell me that. But my recommendation to the board is to make it work here. We've looked at probably doing silo nano filtration systems, but in order to install a nano filtration system, we have to do other things to our well fields in order for that facility to be able to handle that water. There are other things. It's not just at the plant. There are other things that would have to be done at the well field. So here's what I want you to do. For any other questions that exist, I ask you to write them down and give them to the ladies in the back. I've already talked to staff. We're going to start going through all the questions that we've got. Make sure you put a contact number on the sheets that you're filling out so that we can get back to you. I want to thank you all for your time. Madam Board Member, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone.